Mr. Contest Master, fellow Toastmasters, and most welcome guests. Have you ever known someone and thought to yourself, man, if it wasn't for bad luck, this person wouldn't have any luck at all? Well, I used to be one of those kind of people. When bad luck would rain on me, it would pour. I'm going to give you an example of one of my typical bad luck days that I used to have. Back in 1985 in Charlotte, North Carolina, I was on my way to work at the model home where I used to work as a hostess, showing model homes for the William Trotter Company. I showed models for 4 of their 8 communities. All of their models were beautifully furnished, complete with window treatments. That's an important thing to remember. And part of my job was to get there early enough to fix a nice pot of coffee to serve to potential guests when they got there. I knew everything about the houses in these 4 communities. The locations never changed, so I always knew where I was going on any given day. However, this particular day, the usual rules did not apply. And I remember driving up to the Colonial model in Sardis Forest. Now, the fact that the window treatments were gone should have given me a clue that today was going to be a little bit different, but right over my head. And I walked up to the front door, and there's a sign on the door that says, "Beware of dog." And I actually laughed out loud to myself to think, Mr. Trotter, what in the world would you put such a silly sign like that on a model home door? I mean, you're trying to attract people, not scare them away, right? So I've got my master key, and I slip it in the door, and I turn it, and just as I get the door open, what looked like a demon straight out of the pits of hell comes bounding toward that little opening I had just made in the door, with gnashing teeth, just right here at me, foaming at the mouth, and I slammed the door, and I was panting in horror as I watched my life just pass right before my very eyes. And all of a sudden it dawned on me. Mr. Trotter had sold the model, but he didn't tell me, and the owners hadn't changed the lock. They had just put a big old black Doberman pinscher in there. So I swallowed my pride. I called Mr. Trotter, told him what happened. He apologized and gave me directions to the new location. And off I went as quickly as I could. I wanted to get there in time to walk around and familiarize myself with this model so that if anyone came in, I wouldn't sound like a complete idiot if they asked me any questions. I didn't have time for that because right after I got there, the doorbell rings, and I welcomed this wonderful, tall, proper, posh, British couple that came in and said right away, "Love you, we've already seen this model. We're hoping you can take us over to Sardis Woods and show us the Stratford." Sardis Woods, I'm thinking, that's one of the communities I've never worked. It's about a mile from here, so it can't be too hard to find. So I said, okay, sure, no problem, just get in your car, follow me, and I'll take you right on over there. 20 minutes later, we got there. And I was so horrified at the fact that I had gotten us lost, and it took 20 minutes to go 1 mile, and I was still a little shaken up over Satan that I had just come from. And I thought, maybe I can redeem myself, because this house actually looks like one of the models that I'm familiar with. So, okay, I'll give them a tour. And the tour was actually going very well until I opened up the door to the linen closet, and I said, and over here is the powder room, complete with shelves for all your powder. Hoping that if I just made a joke out of it that they would share my sense of humor, but I don't think they had a sense of humor, actually. And I suggested they just look around the rest of the house on their own while I go down to the kitchen to make that coffee. If I could just make a pot of coffee and do one thing right, the day won't be completely lost. So I get into the kitchen, and there were so many cabinets. And now, where is the coffee? So many cabinets in so little time. I am opening and closing every cabinet as fast as I can in rapid succession. I know it must have sounded like a machine gun in there, but I finally found the coffee tin. I got that coffee tin. Oh my, I got it. I can't get the lid off. It was so tight, and I pried, and just as that couple came into the kitchen, bam, the top came off. The coffee tin went straight up in the air, and the coffee came down on me and all over the floor, and I quickly jumped to the floor. And I'm scooping it up as fast as I can, and my feet slipped out from under me, and I landed on my butt just in time to see Mr. and Mrs. Posh standing there, and all I could think to say was, Would you like cream and sugar with that? They said their hasty goodbyes and left. I got cleaned up and I left. And I was halfway back to the model I was assigned to when I realized I left the master keys back at this model. But that wasn't the worst part. The doors to the models lock automatically when they close. So even if I went back, I couldn't get in. But I went back anyway, praying for a miracle. And I got there. I stood at that door. I just stare at it long enough, it'll unlock. Oh, well, it didn't. The sky didn't. It unleashed a downpour on me. And in 3 seconds, I was standing there, soaking wet like a drowned rat. I thought, oh, God, what else could happen? And I look around the corner, and here comes a familiar-looking car right toward the house. Oh, no! Mr. and Mrs. Posh, they're coming back! I can't let them see me like this, smelling like coffee, all locked out, soaking wet. So I did the only logical thing I could do. I jumped in the bushes. In my suit, pantyhose, and 4-inch stilettos in the bushes. And I prayed to God they didn't see me. And Mr. Posh was standing 2 feet away from me, and I heard him say, I don't see her. Her car's here, but she's not. Maybe we'll come back another day. They left, and I had to crawl out, swallow my pride again, go knock on her neighbor's door. And I'm sure I looked like Swamp Thing when I arrived there. My face was covered in dirt, soaking wet, up to my thighs in mud. Sticks and twigs were sticking out of my hair. But they did call for help. Someone came and saved the day, and I actually made it home in one piece. Later on that week, I got a check in the mail from the William Trotter Company because Mr. and Mrs. Posh had actually come back and bought a house, and I got the commission because I was the one that showed it to them first. So I guess the lesson that I learned that day was, even if it rains, and rains bad luck, you can still, if you look hard enough, you can still count on seeing a rainbow.